Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the EFL Fantasy Podcast. My name is Angus,
And my name is Dan.
and we're here to review the game week one action. Championship football is back. What a great time it is, particularly the sort of the early stages when we can talk about them all through the summer and everything. But actually getting a look at these teams is always the best part of things. But first things first, Dan, how are you?
Yeah, it was. I'm all right, Angus. I was better until last night, Monday. I'm sure we'll get into the Lewin game. But yeah, as you mentioned, good championship weekend. Lots of goals. Quite a few high-scoring games in games where I thought might be low-scoring. So yeah, we'll discuss a few of the games and the key topics throughout.
Yeah, so just to sort of either remind people or sort of inform people who are here for the first time, what we sort of, well, the format we settled on was we'll sort of go through how our teams did. We'll go through the sort of key sort of team news from the weekend's games. And then we sort of pick out three key points each. In this case, it will be sort of matches where we want to talk about one or both of the teams, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it can be a particular team, sometimes it's players, but that's sort of the format that we will be sort of continuing with this season. And then we'll conclude with the listener questions. So first, we will go through how we did this game week, with the obvious caveat that the we both have a Sheffield United player and the points aren't correct at the moment. Um, I had a promising start. I got 74 points, with expecting to have five added for Davies in goal. Um, so I had him for hopefully six. Uh, Joe Bryan for zero, Firpo for three, Engel for five, Doughty for six, Azaz for three, Windass 11, Clark 12, Joseph 2, Rutter captain as 18, and Latelaf vice captain as with 13. Slightly annoying with Pring being first sub with 8. Couple of sort of obviously big positives, particularly sort of Windass being a big sort of punt coming off, and I'll talk about him a little bit later. Engel did well. I was a little bit disappointed because without the booking, he was almost certainly going to get bonus. Um, a couple of disappointments. Azaz had a big chance at one point and it got saved and that sort of thing. But all in all, like particularly once it's up to sort of 79, I can't complain too much with that start really. So yeah, feeling pretty positive about the start of the season. Um, how did game week one go for you, Dan?
So I'm currently on 68, but I've got O'Hare, so I'll probably get maybe one or two more points. Definitely two more, I think. I'm not sure he'll get in bonus. So I had Jensen in goal for one, Bogle three, Pickering three, Ayling six, Doughty six, Azaz three, O'Hare, as I mentioned, is currently on one, but hopefully a couple more points. Clark 12, Joseph 2, Vice Captain Rutter for 13, and Captain Latila for 18. So pretty similar to you. It's just you had that Windass haul where I didn't have one. Yeah, so I think it's going to be a pretty average game week from me, but I like my team. I'll likely be rolling. So yeah, nothing to worry about going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of players that we'll come to sort of later on that I'm a little bit sort of almost feeling a little bit of regret on, but in general, pretty pleased with where my team is. But yeah, so next up we've got the sort of team news, which is coming back to you.
Yeah, so got every team's main fantasy news. So I'm going to start with Blackburn. Smodix was benched. He was in the squad, and he did come on. Ranking Castillo played right wing. For Derby, we have a 4 million defender in Elder started at left back. Preston, Keane, and Emil Reese started up front. Frockyard was benched, which was a bit of a surprise. For Sheffield United, it was pretty much as we expected, although Robinson, being the captain, started over Harry Suter. Cardiff, El Ghazi wasn't in the squad, but I'm guessing he's getting up to fitness. Adauda was left back, and Robinson was the striker. For Sunderland, it was as expected. Uh, the front three, the front three behind the striker was Clark, Bellingham, and Roberts, and they had Maeda up front, which I'm not convinced will stay. Although they don't sign strikers, Sunderland, so that it might stay. Oxford Cummins started in goal. Long got the nod at right back. Goodrum played right wing and Placheka played left wing. Norwich, probably the biggest news of the weekend was that Johnny Rowe pulled out pretty close to the kickoff. For Hull, no drama. Giles did play at left wing, but was subbed off on the 58th minute for Miller. Bristol City, their front three was Sykes, Mehmeti, and Armstrong. Mioda was on the bench. For Boro, pretty much as expected. Morris got the start in midfield. Swansea, I was surprised. Ronald and Vopotnik were on the bench. I was shocked when I saw their lineup. Leeds, Joseph did start up front as we expected. Pompey, another 4 million defender in Riley Towler started. No Murphy or Yengi though in the squad. Millwall, Leonard started at right back and Bradshaw got the nod up front. Watford played 3-4-2-1, and the biggest news was Kayembe played as a 10. QPR, no chair. Coley played left wing. West Brom, Hegan played left back. Fellows played right wing. Stoke, Tesgal got the nod up front, the youngster, and randomly Gooch started at left wing. Coventry, Wright was on the bench. Mason Clark started. I don't think that was too much of a surprise as Wright had been injured in pre-season. For Wednesday, Jamal Lowe was the striker. Ugbo was not in the squad. For Plymouth, Paulson was right back. Abetta was left back. Tigani was striker. But I'm not sure how much you can take from their lineup because with how bad they were, they'll probably change it for the next one. Luton, Johnson, we've got injury crisis at the back, so young Johnson did start 4.5. Clark wasn't in the squad. I don't think it's long term. So Nelson, who's not priced yet, was started centre mid. And for Burnley, Roberts and Perez were the fullbacks. Vitino played right wing. Odebear, Kolioshu, and Foster all played. And the big news, Veghorst was on the bench.
I have to admit, we were sort of discussing with I was discussing with Chris, who obviously gave us the info for Burnley, which one was more of a surprise in terms of sort of their involvement, Trafford or Veghorst. I was probably more surprised that Trafford started. But Veghorst being just being in the squad was still a surprise. Like I thought he'd just sort of, be around the club, sort of almost maintaining his fitness until he inevitably left. The fact he was uh, still there, came on, ran around a bit. Um, looked perfectly happy after the game as well. That was interesting. Um,
Surely he goes though, right?
oh yeah, I'm not expecting him to still be there by any means.
I hope so because I've got Foster at 40-1 to be top goal scorer.
Um, but yeah, there were a couple of things there that were fitness issues. Like for example, I know Ronaldo at Swansea, there was a like fitness issue in terms of I think how much he'd played in pre-season as a result. Although I note he has scored in the League Cup tonight, so he'll probably be straight back in. Um, but I suppose that segues nicely into the first game that I wanted to talk about in terms of a sort of key point from the weekend, and it's not because of Swansea. Um, uh, I watched, or one of the games I watched in the Saturday 12:30 window was Middlesbrough against Swansea, and I do have to say, although it was a 1-0 scoreline, um, I thought Middlesbrough were excellent in that game. They put in a really good performance throughout. Um, aside from I think one under-hit pass that almost gifted Swansea a chance that Dieng had to cover. Well, they were sort of in control basically all game. They were in the ascendancy. They should have scored more. Isaiah Jones, final decision lacking from him a couple of times. There was one where, particularly late on, he squares it to Bergzorg. It's 2-0. He tries to take it on. It's then cleared off the line. As Zaz had a great chance to score that was saved at full stretch by the goalkeeper. Um, they were just sort of they were really impressive. I thought Aidan Morris in midfield looked a really good addition. Um, I think both fullbacks did well, um, and I think the front four of Jones, Azaz, McGree, and Latelaf were really strong. I think the three capitalised behind in terms of filling spaces, getting into dangerous areas from just the constant threat that Latelaf was. I think he was sort of the standout, and I know he's in a lot of Gaffr teams, but he was sort of the one really where it was just like, yeah, like this guy, if he stays fit, this could be a big season. Um, I thought Azaz did well. I think he will sort of get some returns in there. Um, but yeah, they're obviously looking at a couple of additions. Hamilton's coming from Man City. I think they do want one or two more as well. But it's a really promising start for them, and I think there's options throughout the team. Like I think we've talked about both fullbacks before, Ayling and Engel. I thought both did pretty well in this game. Um, I think you probably won't want to go with McGree at this point just because he's the most likely one to come out of the team. But I think Jones, Azaz, and Latelaf are all options in attack as well. Um, and a side note for them, it's their first opening day win since 2014. Fun fact. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to add on Swansea. I think they looked like an inferior team, which, to be honest, we would have expected them to be. Particularly with how well Middlesbrough played. And I don't think their season will be defined by how they do in games like Middlesbrough away, um, which, could well be, particularly as the season goes along and we look at it, one of the tougher games you can have. Um, but yeah, your thoughts in general, Dan. I know you didn't watch this game, but your thoughts in general on well Middlesbrough assets, etc.
Yeah, I think we covered Middlesbrough quite a lot. Pre-season that we like them, they're probably going to be top six. Latte left straight away with the goal. Um, Same as you, I went for Azaz, so a bit frustrating to only get 3 points, but yeah, they've got options throughout. Um, with Swansea, just a bit of a funny lineup. I know if there's sort of fitness issues with Ronaldo and for Potnick, but you'd like to think going forward, both of them are going to play key parts in their season. We know Middlesbrough have this really nice run of fixtures, so I've got triple of them, so I'm hoping they'll continue to do well. They've got Derby this week, and we'll get on to Derby in a bit, but yeah, they've been slow starters the last couple of seasons, and it's really cost them. You could argue maybe promotion in Carrick's first season, and then definitely reaching the playoffs last year, where I think Norwich and West Brom were there for the taking to get overtaken. But yeah, three Middlesbrough for me. So hopefully they continue the form.
Yeah, I think they're a team, as I say, you can be looking at. Not, I'm not expecting a lot of people to sort of be making knee-jerk moves, although we'll come on to a couple of teams that might be provoking that. But I think if you are looking around at the moment, some of those Middlesbrough assets um, will probably be looking very appealing right now, and rightly so. Um, but yeah, so that's sort of, I guess, the main thing on them. As you say, they've been slow starters before, and if they're not going to be slow starters, then they could be, real contenders this season, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, so that's sort of Middlesbrough really. I just wanted to sort of talk about them because, well, they were one of the teams I watched, but I was also really impressed by them. What was the first team or game that you wanted to cover?
I'm going to do Blackburn Derby just because it was on Friday night. I didn't watch the first half of this. I was watching the other game, but I did catch up with the highlights. And Blackburn started the game pretty well. New signing Gay up front made an impact. Obviously, as mentioned in the team news note, Smodics in the starting 11, he was on the bench. We'll get to him in a minute, but Blackburn started the game quite well and scored. Tyrese Dolan. I think we're both fans of Tyrese Dolan as a player, but he needs consistency. But he's up and running with the goal in the first game. It then looked like Derby played quite well. Well, they did in the second. At the start of the second goal, got scored from a set piece from Nelson, captain Mendes Lang, who actually ends up with 2 assists in this game. So he could be talismanic for Derby this year. And I was really shocked. Basically, Blackburn went down the other end and scored again. And then there was a space of about 5 minutes where they just fell apart, Derby, which you can't do at any level. And that's really quite worrying. So they did pull a consolation back, another set piece. So maybe definitely a weakness from Blackburn from set pieces, or maybe Derby. It's going to be a strength for Derby. But yeah, Smodics by this time had come on, got a goal and assist, and for someone who's basically been rumoured to be leaving for the Premier League, for him to still go with the squad, happy enough to play, get some minutes. I think he might have added a bit to his price tag as well, especially with he's got another couple of goals in the League Cup tonight. So yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to go for any of these players. For example, I've got Pickering. I thought he was the best 4.5, so I had him. I'm a bit disappointed they conceded twice. But yeah, did you watch the highlights from this, Angus? And obviously, if people went for Smodics, you got a bit lucky. But are you interested in like a Dolan or Gahey from this?
So I actually had it on sort of my iPad. I had
Mm,
the Sheffield United game, which I'll come on to a bit on the TV, and I had this on my iPad. So I was sort of half watching it.
yeah,
Um, I thought Gay looked good up top. Dolan obviously, and I will say probably well, there were two standouts, but one of the main standouts to me, we talked about him in pre-season, everything was Callum Britton.
yeah.
Um, Getting forward on the right, but also on a number of those set pieces, which we always look for. Um, and so I think but there were a couple of times even just getting forward from right back where he was sort of putting some really good balls in, either just sort of crosses or actually sort of passes across, picking players out and that sort of thing. So I was impressed by him. And obviously on the other side, Mendes Lang. Um, there was a lot of talk about him coming up, the number of returns he got, and he was central to anything Derby managed to do in that game. And I do think, I think we said in the preview that there might be times where he would be an option. And I do think it looked that way in that opening game that like there may well be times where he might be an option in that sort of price bracket.
You mentioned Britain, and obviously I've got Pickering. Britain's priced point 0.5 more. Do you think it's? I can't do it because I don't have the
Yeah.
budget. But if you were going in new, would you recommend Britain
Yeah, I
over
think so.
Pickering?
I think
Yeah,
his open play sort of chance creation, everything is better anyway. But
yeah.
then when you factor in he's on some of those set pieces as well, it seems like yeah, if you were going in new, it would definitely be Britain for me.
And with Derby playing Middlesbrough next game week, are you tempted to captain or put an armband on Latte Laff? I know there's quite a few decent fixtures around.
I'll certainly be tempted, particularly like I said, after being really impressed with him in game week one. It'll be tough to sort of ignore sort of him, or particularly with some sort of armband. So I
Yeah,
think there's a pretty good chance, partially based on what I saw of Derby, partially based on what I saw of
yeah,
Middlesbrough. But yeah, it's certainly on the cards.
yeah. I think there's a lot of intriguing options though, and Oxford done well, but Coventry play them. Um, there's definitely options throughout. Luton play Portsmouth, although we'll get on to both of them later.
Uh,
Next game, Angus.
I just wanted to actually, while I remember, the one sort of standout moment for me was Hayden Carter, the centre back.
It's when he done two of the players. Brilliant.
He wasted at centre back, coming up with that assist, turning them inside out, and then playing it perfectly to the back post for Andy Vyman. Um, yeah, I couldn't get through that game without sort of bringing that up because that was
No,
that
that's
was
fair.
excellent. As mentioned, I'll go to the other Friday night game, Sheffield United 2, Preston nil. Um, so we had sort of, I guess, most of what we would have expected. There were a couple of question marks going into it. I was banking on, particularly based on pre-season, sort of Davies starting in goal, so that wasn't necessarily a surprise. Um, I think we'd got a clear enough idea from pre-season that Arblaster was going to start in midfield. Farmer off the left, the way he's been playing a little bit pre-season, and Brooks and Kiefer Moore was available to start up top, although it looked like he had a bit of a black eye. Uh, but I was quite impressed with them. There were a few interesting notes for me. One being, I think we were all expecting quite a sort of marauding Harrison Burrows. There wasn't a lot of that in this first game. Now, part of me thinks just the way the Preston system is set up and everything, maybe it just makes it a little bit tougher to do that, and we might see a bit more of it going into future games. So I wouldn't necessarily panic about the fact that there wasn't a lot of him in attack in this game. Although he was on quite a few of the set pieces, which is another thing we always sort of talk about with these players. Um, our Blaster's obviously lucky with the opener, it takes a massive deflection. Brooks is also lucky to get an assist, given that he just sort of lays it off to him. Um, but it's the two guys at 6.0. I think we'd sort of been saying before the season one of these guys is going to emerge, and obviously they both returned in the first game.
Well, we both had a disagreement because you liked Arblas and I thought Brooks was going to be the better
Yeah,
option.
and it
I
turns
think.
out both of them.
Well, I think long term, I think Arblas is going to start. I think Brooks, with the rumours of some of the players they're bringing in,
Yeah,
I think he might maybe become more of a squad player.
yeah. But I think the other one, obviously, with the second goal, another popular one in Gustavo Harmer. I mean, he has to move a little bit, but Freddie Woodman basically throws him the ball. Now, it's an excellent finish to adjust quite quickly and sort of place it, sort of lift it over him with enough power so that he can't get back, etc. But there's a massive helping hand from Freddie Woodman there. The one thing I would say with Gustavo Hammer is he's obviously scored the goal, um, backed up by some of the stats that did eventually appear in terms of the Opta stats. He didn't do a great deal in the game other than score the goal.
Yeah, I thought he was quite wasteful at
Yeah,
times. For you don't really associate Hamer with that, but when it mattered, he stepped up.
yeah. And I think that's the thing. Like, everyone knows from a couple of years ago, I'm a big fan of his. Um, And so part of it was a little bit of frustration of like, come on, you can do more than this. But yeah, I think he was a little bit wasteful. O'Hare was busy. I think he was unfortunate not to be a little bit more involved at times, but um, yeah, generally I think it was a pretty good start from them. Um,
I think it was solid, wasn't it?
yeah,
Like,
like
I think when they break, they look good, and you've obviously got pace with the three behind more, so it made them look a bit more dangerous than I think they were. Although they never really looked like they were going to concede. Um, when considering the amount of goals they conceded in the Premier League, that's a massive boost, I think.
yeah, and I think part of it to do have to acknowledge is I was really underwhelmed by Preston.
Yeah,
I don't think it's why Ryan Lowe has gone. We obviously have to talk about Ryan Lowe
yeah.
has gone after one game, but I was really underwhelmed by them. I thought they were poor. They had a couple of really good openings. One of which, I think fell to Reese, and um, he hit the shot so poorly. I was debating whether Davies was even going to get credited with the save. Um, but I thought they were really underwhelming in that game, and yeah, Ryan Lowe is gone, which is a strange one because obviously the timing is bad. You spent the summer sort of planning for him and whatever, but I think the fans have wanted him gone for a good while now. We talked about it last season at multiple points that they wanted him gone, and I'm not sure they're going to be too disappointed by this.
I think they were very split, the fan base, and they've been struggling to score. I think, including the game this season on Friday night, they hadn't scored in the last 6 games in the league, going back to last year, and they'd lost all of them. So yeah, they've obviously clashed, and Lowe's obviously wanted players which they've not been able to get, and they've obviously had a falling out. I did like. I don't know if I did like Thorardson in midfield. I thought he looked quite a tidy player considering they lost Brown. I think he looks like a good signing. Not sure he's going to be a Gaffr asset, but I thought he looked decent. Yeah, I can see why the fans weren't enjoying Lowe's football, though. They didn't really have any pace. They've obviously lost. Miller, who was their outlet from last
Yeah.
year. Yeah, it's a bit of a worry that I think they need to get some pace up front, really.
Yeah, and I do agree on Thor Darson. I thought he looked a decent player. Um, you know, it's not to disparage some of these guys as well because I think they are decent players, but I think there was a lot of thought about things like them upgrading on Brad Potts, and then you get to the opening day of the season and it's Brad Potts again.
Well,
Um,
they signed Kessler Hayder, didn't they?
yeah.
He did come
Um,
on, but
so I guess you'd hope like that's one that would change, but um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do now. Because I think they've said for the League Cup game and the league game at the weekend, the assistant will take charge, and then while they sort of look for a replacement. Yeah, I think at the moment I'm not sure anyone was really going in on Preston.
no,
I'd you
I'd
know
stay off at the
I'd
minute.
stay away, particularly sort of with the lack of clarity at the moment. Um, you know, particularly if they don't want to change too much, maybe do it a bit better. Then someone like Hecking Bottom could be an option. I know David Moyes was apparently at the game today.
Was that real? I thought that was an old picture.
I saw a couple of people say it was just an old picture, and a couple of people say he was actually there. So
I'll be
um,
amazed if Moyes
if
takes
they
that.
got David Moyes, then then we're looking at something a bit special, I guess. But yeah, we I think Sheffield United. I think you know obviously at the moment people don't have their points for their Sheffield United players, but in terms of I wouldn't be put off by some of the things you'll have seen about sort of Burrows not really getting forward and that sort of thing. Like I think, they look solid enough, and then we'll see how it progresses. They're obviously like I'm probably about to have a problem because I went with Adam Davies, knowing that that was probably going to be a transfer waiting to happen at some point. Um, and they're now signing Cooper from Plymouth.
Are you just going to move to Cooper? Or?
I don't think so. But I will sort of have a little bit of a think about what I'm going to do. Um, but I knew it was a possibility. But apart from that, in terms of Sheffield United players, I'd probably just be sort of comfortable sticking with whatever you've got at this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So what's the second game that you've got?
I went for Leeds Portsmouth. Um, yeah, and a crazy game. Um, I think Leeds hit the woodwork 3 times in the first 10 minutes. They did finally get a breakthrough on the 10th minute through a penalty from Strike, who I think he took one last year, but Dan James won the penalty. Obviously, there was no Bamford or Pirro on the pitch, but it looks like he's definitely ahead of players like Rutter, Nonto. So if you went stroke, well done. You've done quite
Yeah,
well. Um, yeah, it was. They absolutely battered Pompey for the first 10, 15 minutes, and then gradually Portsmouth got themselves back in the game. Nice worked goal for Pompey's first. Great pass from Pack to new striker Sorensen, who, well, he got it on target and basically Meslier let it go through him. So, not ideal. Pompey then shocked the world when they went 2-1 up through Callum Lang, Thunder Blaster. And if you're the manager, Messina, you've got them in at half time, and you'll say keep it tight for the first 10 minutes, and then Nonto goes on a run and then scores in the 46th minute to make it 2-2. And you're thinking, well, Leeds are going to go on and win this. And if you look more in detail of the stats, they absolutely battered Portsmouth. But Pompey then get a 92nd minute penalty, which Bogle, for some reason, decides to basically put their striker in a headlock. Callum Lang gets his second of the game, casually slots it away. And then you think that's it. And then suddenly Brendan Harrison and Piero are on the pitch by this time. And Piero slides through Harrison. He makes it 3-3. And then Harrison somehow misses an easier chance to make it 4-3, hits it wide. Absolutely bonkers game. Leeds created six big chances with XG of over 3. Pompey basically created 1 XG, and that included a penalty. So it's a great result for Portsmouth, but let's be honest, if Leeds play this 100 times, they probably win in 95. So nothing to worry about with my attacking options. Anything for you, Angus, in this game?
No, I think it's interesting. A couple of these things, like um, we've obviously got the Strauch thing. I think we saw last season he was one of 4 players who took a penalty. Somerville was obviously the main one. Piero and Bamford were the other ones, and then Strauch. So I guess it makes sense with Piero and Bamford not on the pitch that it would have been him. But for example, Firpo, I think got a couple of bonus. Bogle might have as well, but Firpo another one on some of those set pieces. Dan James, really like the look of. I thought Nonto looked better than he did last year, which I think partially was moving over to the left-hand
Yeah,
side did make a difference. Um, Rutter, I thought looked good as well. Um, and I thought Mateo Joseph had moments. Um,
are you worried about Joseph? Like, there's no denying that he's a good player, but at the end of the day, he's coming into a team that's expected to get promoted, and he's young. And if he doesn't hit the ground running, we know what's going to happen. He'll be the first player out of the team. You have got Piero and Bamford lying in wait. So although I've got him and he's great value at 7 million to play for one of the top sides, if he starts becoming uh, a minutes risk, he's going to have to get moved on pretty quickly, I think.
yeah, although I thought it was interesting that Dan James and Nonto went off before he did.
Mm,
Um, so I'm not worried about it yet. I think
yeah,
that sort of helps a little bit at the moment. Like they made those changes, and that was with Hero coming on, and Joseph still stayed on. He then eventually went off um, for Bamford, but yeah, I'm not worried at the moment. In part because I did think, okay, there were a few moments for him in there. It wasn't
yeah.
like he was sort of a bit of a passenger. Um, but I think it's one that will be a little bit of a watch and see. Um, but being ready to potentially move off. I think if you're on sort of James, Nonto, um,
Rutter, you're fine.
Rutter, you're fine. There's probably some questions about the defensive guys. I'd probably say Firpo is a harder sell than Bogle, even though Bogle did get forward well a few times. I think particularly just with the
Got
set
2 key
pieces as
passes,
well
didn't
for Firpo makes him I would just say a slightly tougher sell than Bogle, but I think, you'd have to have a really good reason to sell one of them at this point.
he? Well, like I said, it was a mistake by the goalie, an absolute rocket, and a penalty.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't want to completely take it away from Portsmouth because they did
yeah.
score at key times, but that first 10 minutes,
Oh,
oh, it
it could have
could
been
have
any number.
Yeah, but that's the hardest game they're going to play this season. They've got it out first. They've got Luton at home. Um, let's be honest, they could score a couple against Luton if we if we defend like we did the other night. So yeah, but we've been pretty confident that we think Portsmouth are definitely the better team out of the three
Yeah.
promoted, and will stay up. So yeah, that hasn't changed
Mm.
my thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll discuss Leeds defenders at some point where I think it comes into the possible knee jerks from game week one. They are candidates for that. Um, but yeah, so the third game that I've got to discuss is wow, I've already forgotten which game it was. Sheffield Wednesday against Plymouth, the Sunday game. Um, And yeah, I think I was probably the most bullish when we were talking pre-season about Sheffield Wednesday. And look, don't get me wrong, Plymouth were bad. Like, we'll need to have some sort of conversation about Plymouth. But I thought Sheffield Wednesday picked up where they left off. Like, if they hadn't been as good as they were and as sort of well drilled as they were and everything, I think I don't think Plymouth would have got away with it, but I think Plymouth wouldn't quite have been quite as exposed as they were if Sheffield Wednesday hadn't played as well as they did. Um, thought Jamal Lowe led the line really well. He obviously got the opener. I felt for Brendan Galloway on the second goal. There's nothing he can do. It just sort of hits him almost. It's really poor from Better on the far post. Too weak in terms of getting a little bump and he's out of it, and then just doesn't get up in the air. Um, the third goal, Josh Windass, obviously I talked about, who I thought had a really good game as well, and Michael Smith came on and got the fourth. He actually managed to get top bonus in this game. In part because on his goal it was two attempts, so he obviously got the two shots on target with the goal. I think he managed another shot on target and two key passes as well. So, and he was only on for about 10 minutes. um, but no, I was really impressed with him. Um, Jan Valery. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Jan Valery, particularly if they have any issues with defenders, people who are essentially like me and already sick of Joe Bryan, might have strong eyes on Jan Valery. Um, I thought the wide players were good. Masaba, if he develops an end product at all, will be a serious player. I talked about the Windass thing. I thought my opportunity at return was gone when he played it to Masaba, who sent the ball into orbit. But I thought Windass was very busy in that 10 role on all the set pieces as well. I thought Bannon, and in particular the new man Ingleson in midfield, I thought he was really good. Really impressed with him. Got all around the pitch, supported the attack well, getting into the box, sort of he looked a really good addition, um, particularly when you think most of those players have been playing together, aside from sort of two or three of them, and he immediately looked part of it and brought a really good dynamic to the midfield. Um, so yeah, I was really impressed by them. Like I know Plymouth were bad. We can talk about Plymouth. They were bad. I've been sort of reflecting on it, and this is not to stick the knife into them and everything, but I think I asked the question in our chat on Sunday about how many championship squads would you say are definitely worse than Plymouth's, and it's not a long list. Um, and that's the sort of issue that they're up against. Like, you know, a lot of people have very strong feelings on Wayne Rooney. Um, I think that it's going to be tough there. Um, I think, it's tough to sort of fully assess him. I mean, I still don't know if he's any good, but I look at a team like that and they're just being devoid of talent, and I'm just sort of like, I don't know, or particularly relative talent, and I'm just sort of like, I don't know what to do with that, and I think it will become clear as it goes along, but without some additions, they're probably going to struggle this season, and they could bring in, for a lot of people who think Wayne Rooney's terrible, they could bring in a better manager, and without changing the personnel, they'd probably struggle this season. Um, so not to sort of oversimplify it on that front, but I do think that was part of it. Um, I think it was unfortunate the timing of the Cooper thing because it sounded like Cooper was basically on the bench because of the sort of proximity of the transfer. Um, but yeah, two teams that will come out of it obviously feeling sort of polar opposites. But yeah, what are your thoughts on these two, Dan?
Yeah, like, I don't think people were overly surprised when you with this result. Maybe they thought it wouldn't be quite as bad, but I think a lot of people thought Sheffield Wednesday would win. They've just improved their squad all round, really. Sheffield Wednesday added key players in the areas they needed. They've got pace up front. You've got Ugbo's going to come back into there up front. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Lowe. I'm guessing he'll probably get in um, one of the wings. I'd have thought. I didn't know too much about Ingleson. I didn't watch the full match, but I've managed to catch the highlights. So I need to watch a game to fully understand how good he is. I did think about Valerie as an option. I came close a few times to putting him in. Yeah, and they've just got options throughout. I know you like Windass. It's going to be a good price at 6.5 if he's playing just behind the strikers. Yeah, I like Sheffield Wednesday. Plymouth, it looks like they're going to be a team to target this year. They've got Hull next, so I'm not bringing in a Hull player, but they've got QPR, Stoke, and Sunderland after Hull. So we've all got Jack Clark. If he's about, that'll probably be a key one to go for. Yeah, Wednesday. Sunderland, I think that might be on TV, that game. That'll be an interesting game. To Sunderland, who likes to attack. Valerie against Clark, that could be an interesting battle. But yeah, I'm not surprised with Sheffield Wednesday. I just wanted to see how it all figures out. They've got Leeds in game week 3, so maybe I hold off until game week 4. But I think we're going to have Wednesday options throughout this season.
Yeah, I mean that was sort of my big takeaway, particularly, there's viable options. I mean, even people looking at sort of 5.0 keepers, like I haven't ruled out in terms of Davies,
Yeah,
if at the
Beadle.
same price, Beadle, for example, as well. So I think they're sort of there's quite a few options there. But I was very impressed. Despite Plymouth being bad, I was impressed by the way Sheffield Wednesday played, because I think they made the most of that. Um, and so I think we're coming to you for your third game, Dan.
Yeah, so I picked Luton Burnley. Probably the biggest game. You got two teams coming down for the Premier League. Wasn't ideal time for us to play Burnley. We've still got injuries from the Premier League. I think we've got 7, 8 players out, most of them centre backs. So we had a back three of Mengi, Walters, who we got from Arsenal, who's a highly rated wing back, and he was playing right-sided centre back. And we got Joe Johnson, who's come through our academy, England under 18s, but he's probably not. He's normally a wing back, and he was playing centre back. So yeah, it was just a bit of a nightmare. Nelson played centre mid. He's a youngster. Um, at times, I think we looked good, but we were far too open at the back. We conceded four big chances. XG was pretty even, but you can't defend like we did and expect expect to get away with it. I thought Burnley looked pretty solid, as I think we thought they would when you looked at their squad. We did mention in the pre-season, if you took a punt on a Burnley player, it could probably work. Just it was just who do you punt on? Um, and I think they've got options. I think Roberts or Perez will be good if they are first choice. Um, Brownhill got the goal. I'm not sure he's a great option. But then you got Odebear and Kolioshi. They're gonna, if they stay, they're gonna cause havoc. I think they're both 8.5 or 8.5, and then Foster, although he didn't get on the score sheet, he did get an assist, and
And what an
it
assist.
was a good run. Yeah. Um, so yeah, I think he showed in the Premier League that he's a pretty good player. So yeah, I don't think it was a major surprise of how good Burnley were. I think the way we played probably helped him out. A bit naive, but yes. Which three Burnley are you after, Angus?
Well, some people will know that for a decent amount of pre-season, I had Pires in my squad.
Yeah,
He was the one, particularly when we were talking in the preview pods, of like, oh, you're going to have to pick one and just go with this and accept it might not be a thing. And I got rid of him, which is fine because he would have been first sub for me um, this week anyway. So that would have been painful. But he's definitely one for me. Um, I think they look decent defensively. He is. I think by the end of the game, he was on base. Well, before he went off, he was on basically all the set pieces, and he's got a really good delivery on him.
yeah.
And so I think he's one that's going to be very interesting. Vitinho, if he's still going to play on the wing,
I,
getting
I'm
forward well, but like,
I, I'm not sure that sticks. I wonder if that was just to counter
yeah.
Alfie Doughty to some point.
But I think that's one thing to watch because if we
Mm,
get to the second game and he's still on the wing, then obviously that's dramatic. I think I sent a screenshot in a group chat of like um, buying Perez, Odebear, and Foster, and asking whether it's too reactive or not reactive enough. I think those would be the three I'd be looking at. Just because of that question mark over Vitinho. Um, I think Perez was getting forward a bit more than Roberts. Um, if they change things slightly, that obviously might affect things, but um, Brownhill, I think, is still a perfectly good option. He was doing well in that game. And then yeah, Odebear, Kolyosho, Foster. Um, I think Foster is probably slightly tougher just because of his price. But I was impressed. We knew he was good. I thought the run to set up the goal was excellent. Um,
yeah, we were gone crazy though.
yeah,
We lost the ball as well. Our centre back when we did, we got done on the counter.
but yeah, I think there's options throughout with them, and I think they showed sort of the strength they can be there. It sounds like they're going to lose a few more players, which they've got a
And
massive squad. So
they apparently they're going to lose O'Shea. It's a shame he didn't start the last night considering he scored. But it looks like what Sanderberger, O'Shea are definitely going
yeah,
by the
Berger
looks.
was left out of the squad. I think there's a lot of talk that a move is relatively close with him. Um, yeah, O'Shea, I think it's Brentford. Um, but they've already got the cover there. Um,
Yeah, they got decent. I don't know if how many are fit though. I think there's a few injuries. Is there?
yeah, but I think even for the moment they could potentially cover it. Like I know Bayer's injured. I think Alder Keel. I mean, to be honest, looking at that team, if they had to play Luke McNally at
Yeah,
centre
it's
back,
fine.
it's
Yeah,
fine. Like
yeah.
even if they were like, okay, for a few games we're going to play like Connor Roberts at centre back, probably be fine. Uh, I'm not sort of overly concerned about that from their point of view. Um, and I think it's one of those things where they can potentially make a couple of additions. I know they've made sort of a couple already, but once they sort of get a few out the door, have a bit more clarity about who's still going to be there, etc. But yeah, I mean, there's just a wealth of talent there. I think is the big thing. I mean, Veghorst came off the bench. I mean, Zarori came off the bench. Sengo, McNally did come off the bench. Scott Twine didn't even get used. Like Manuel Benson didn't even get used. Like Sander Berger, not even in the squad. Like all that sort of thing. Uh, and so I think like you just sort of see it. They're probably going to challenge just on weight of talent as much as anything else.
They've got the best squad in the league.
Yeah,
It's even better than Leeds.
yeah,
The depth is even
yeah,
better than. Anything on Luton? Obviously, Doughty still got his bonus. Good
yeah,
assist.
yeah. And no one's particularly surprised.
No,
I think, yeah, it's there's so much of it that's just you watch that game and it's like, yes, that is a team with one fit centre back. Like it's just sort of, there's so much of it where it's like it affects the takeaway from that game. Um, Doughty, yeah, he did everything that you thought he would. He got the assist. Decent deliveries into the box. You can see returns coming there. So sort of no question mark on him whatsoever. Um, I think the people who went with Chong, um, mixed game. He obviously got the goal, also got a silly booking. Um,
I mean he had to do that, didn't he? If
yeah,
I don't know. I think I think he's going to do better than what he's ever done before in the championship.
yeah.
I think he's going to get close to 20 attacking returns
I
if he
think
plays
that's
in week in.
tough to do, but we'll see how he does. I mean, I think Somerville had like 28, so
There you
20 is
go.
actually quite tough to do, but it's possible. But I do think, I think people who went with him are probably relatively encouraged. Um, Maybe a little bit of concern if people went with Morris or Adebayo. Like I think they were fine. Um,
Adebayo hit the bar.
yeah,
I think
like
he'll be
they
fine.
had a couple of moments, and so I wouldn't. It's not sort of like massive concern, but um, and
We've got a
again,
decent run now. We've got
yeah,
Portsmouth, Preston, QPR, Millwall. It's an okay run coming up.
yeah, and I think it will be a bit more telling, particularly with some of these Luton assets going forward, other than Doughty, in terms of whether people want to hold on to them or whether it's sort of you move on and you potentially come back. But
Mm.
um, I think Doughty is the one where it's like, no, you're just going to hold him through.
Yeah, I think that's sensible.
Um, so I think that's all the games that we were going to cover. So in terms of sort of the games that we didn't cover, we'll just sort of hit on anything in particular we want to cover from those games. Um, First thing I was going to mention was um, good opening result for Sunderland, Cardiff away. Not exactly the easiest, and I thought they did well to come away with the result. Jack Clark obviously getting a goal. We talked I think about the fullbacks in pre-season, and it was Sirkin in this case who got an assist. Luke O'Nien goal and um, Joe Bellingham setting up Jack Clark. I think again, Clark starts the season goal, 4 bonus.
But do you know
Um,
what was? He wasn't on the bonus until the goal though. But as soon as he done, that was it though.
yeah.
It's like,
So I think it's one of those things you can never rule it out with him, and so I just thought like perfectly representative start really.
yeah, I'd like to, we've got to talk about Oxford briefly.
Yeah,
Um, Come up great 2-0 win. Um, I think Norwich were. I don't think it was ideal with Johnny Rowe pulling out, but that being said, Harris, good finish for. I've criticised him all summer, but he finished. It was a great finish. Cameron Brannigan. It's been common knowledge that he was way too good for League One. Um, he's Oxford's best player. He's got a goal on the first game of the season. Um, Looking at the stats, they created three big chances to Norwich's zero, so pretty good defensively as well. So um, yeah, I'm intrigued to see how Oxford do going forward. A tricky game though this week away to Coventry, where um, yeah,
in terms of sort lost you for a second there. I think we're back,
okay.
but um, a couple of issues at my end. But yeah, I think Oxford big result for them. And I think yeah, there's been a couple of sort of varying reports on Jonathan Rowe about whether he pulled out on the morning of the game, whether the club held him out of the game. But I'm willing to believe the initial report that he withdrew from the squad. That feels like the most accurate, and then it's sort of spin afterwards. Um, the only other thing I think that I had to mention, I mean, there's the Watford win, but other than saying that Millwall let me down, particularly Joe. Well, two things: Joe Bryan getting a yellow card in the 86th minute for arguing. Great, love that. But really, for me, it was the Josh Maja hat trick.
Yeah, where
Um,
did that one come?
yeah, you could have given me like 50 guesses on the first person to get a hat trick this season, and I wouldn't name Josh Maja. So, I mean, obviously a big start for him, big start for them. Um,
It's
um,
going to be their main man though, with Tom Sasante gone.
yeah, and seeing some of the reviews of Devante Cole tonight, I'm not sure he's going to put much pressure on the spot. Um, so yeah, so I think that was just one that jumped out to me as, well, that's weird.
Yeah, that was very weird. They've got home to Leeds Saturday. I think I'll be at the Pompey game, so that's a good game if you're watching on TV. I think it was worrying though from a QPR point of view. A lot of them were crosses.
Yeah,
Fellows, we mentioned Fellows as a old-fashioned winger and put out across the odd ball weight. So yeah, I tell you what, if West Brom do well with all the troubles they're going through, it just proves how well Corberan is
yeah,
at getting a team set up.
yeah. I mean, I think there's a few of these teams. They've got Leeds at the weekend. Like, obviously that will sort of be another point in terms of how well they're going to do. But I think you're obviously not actually steaming into Josh Maja, but I think it's a positive for them to get a result like that on the board. And as you say, I think a couple of concerns for QPR. Um, I'm just trying to think. I know Chris sent us a couple of thoughts on QPR. Um, he did say that Maja only had about 10 touches, but managed a hat trick and but like had some good movement. He also said that Grant was impressive on the left, so we're back to Carl and Grant territory, Dan's favourite at
I
the
can't.
time.
It cost me loads a few seasons ago.
And he did mention that they really struggled to deal with crosses. Um, and from the sort of player specific side, he said uh, Scheller up top looked really poor. Anderson was a bright spot, and he said it was a great header for his goal, and he took all the set pieces. And saying they look for uh, Jimmy Dunn on everything when it comes to that. He also asked for credit on saying that Anderson was the one to get, which yeah, he was another one that was that I did sort of look at, although I'm not going to be too disappointed because I went for Windass over him, so that worked out ultimately. And he said about Hegem for West Brom, he said is literally the championship Dan Burn for West Brom. Uh,
Yeah, they did sign a left back, didn't they? So I wonder. I can't remember his name.
Frabotta from
Yeah, I
Juventus.
should think he'll get in.
Yeah.
But so Angus, the QPR are struggling for crosses, and they've got Sheffield United. Big Kiefer.
Yeah. And for those on Harrison Burrows,
Yeah.
um, um, and he did say that reinforcements will come in, and Chair was obviously out. He'll be out a little bit longer, I think.
Okay.
Um,
They signed Dembele today, and another player I saw. I can't
uh,
remember.
was it a Japanese player? I forget his
Yeah.
name. Both of whom can play wide or as sort of the central attacking mid. So they've got sort of
Quite a lot of
diverse
depth.
options there as well. Um, but yeah, so I think a little bit of a concern for them, but also a real positive for West Brom because I think it's going to be an awkward period for them. So anytime they can pick up results is good. Um, if you don't have anything else in particular you want to mention, then we can just get on to the questions.
Yeah, let's get on to the questions.
So first one, ironically, is from Chris Hermitage, which is what would be the biggest overreaction to week one?
Overreaction.
I think it was when I sent a screenshot of taking a -8 to get 3 Burnley players.
I can't wait for Cardiff to beat them 1-0. Just sit back and defend and beat them 1-0. Yeah, I'm trying to think overreaction. I'm not
Uh,
sure. I think it. Yeah, I don't know.
the other one I'll give you is like people rushing to sell Leeds defenders.
I mean, I'm pretty happy keeping my team together.
Yeah, but in terms of the overreactions, I think there'll be a lot of people who look at that and say like want to sell their Leeds defenders. I've seen a few people talk about it as well, and it's particularly as you say in terms of the goals they actually gave up. Like
Yeah,
you look at their defensive record last year as well. Like I'm not sure I'd be desperate to do that.
I'm looking forward to everyone bringing in Josh Madger.
Yeah. John Jacob, bastard. Any players do well in game week one that you wanted but bottled it due to being not good at fantasy football? This is about Lucas Perez. And yes, I'm annoyed. Yes, I have already debated selling Firpo to get him. Uh, uh, yeah, that's sort of obviously what that's getting at, and that is the main one for me. Particularly because he was the one where I was like, no, I'm gonna just take a punt on him, and uh, sort of didn't. I wish I'd bottled Joe Bryan though. Uh,
Yeah, I was pretty set with mine. Like it took me a while to make a draft I liked, but I pretty much went for everyone I wanted, so it just didn't work out.
yeah. FPL Frog, this summer has a champ club made a better sale than getting £9.5 million for Adam Eder? Also, as a man who spent his Saturday in Oxford, can I please advise your listeners not to buy any Norwich players until September? One more thing, please talk about Jon Rowe being a nonsense. Um, so yeah, I think the Adam Eder thing is sort of notable. Um, I don't think they were really expecting him to be involved. I think they were expecting this move to happen. I don't think even they expected to get this much money for Adam Eder. Um, I think they've done excellent business to get that much for him at this point, particularly when he didn't want to be there. They didn't seem like they particularly wanted him to be there. Um, so to get that much money for him is certainly a positive. Um, yeah. Um, and Jon Rowe, I think pulling out in the morning of the game is always sort of because it sort of truly sabotages your team in terms of they've been planning for you to play. And then like it's different, for example, a couple of the Leeds guys at the start of last season where it was just like they weren't involved while it was going on. Where he was going to be involved and then sort of pulled out at the last minute. It's not great really, is it?
I think you just have to look at Sammy Smodics. Sammy Smodics could have done what Jon Rowe has. He hasn't. He's obviously been on the bench, come on, goal and assist, helped them win the game. He's then played in a League Cup game where, like, he probably doesn't even want to, but he scored a couple more goals. So, yeah, I just think at the end of the day, you're at that club until they sell you. If they want you to play, you should be playing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing really. Smodics hadn't even played in pre-season as a result, and yet he was there game week 1. So I just think it's poor really. James Wood has asked, "Hey fellas, loving the pod. What are the most interesting transfer ins and outs you expect before the end of the window?" Like this, let's get weird. Uh, no, I think the interesting, particularly outs, we've mentioned him a few times now, is Sammy Smodics because if he's
I think
because
it
if
will
he's
happen.
yeah, but if he's there for any length of time, I mean, I think people are going to be tempted to get him this weekend. Um, but I would advise against it. For clarity, I would advise against it. But I think if he is still there, that is interesting. It's almost more just the flip side of if he doesn't go, that's interesting. Um, insert Leeds winger here in
Yeah,
terms of
what who they
interesting
sign?
ins. Yeah.
I think Nonto's going to stay.
Yeah, but I think they're still going to sign someone. And I think that's
Yeah,
the interesting thing. That's one of the more interesting ones for me of who that person is.
yeah. For Sheffield United, it looks like Hamer could go. He could also stay as well. Like um, Sheffield United are going to sign some. They're signing Raksaki, aren't they?
Mm.
Lou and I don't know. I'd like us to sign a player. We haven't done one for a while. Um, I'm not sure if any of Luton players are going to go though, unless we get a silly bid. It's the board have been quite adamant that they don't need a sell. So maybe unless we get like a silly bid, maybe from like a Bournemouth if they want Adebayo or something like that. But it's gonna take a lot of money, I think. What about
Um,
like a player getting loaned in that always get loaned in?
yeah, I mean, I've been trying to think of like, sort of the most interesting ones, and I mean, there's not a great deal. Like maybe, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's someone who's like deemed sort of surplus at one of the promoted clubs or
Do you think
something
someone like
that
a
could come
James
back.
Bree gets a move?
Potentially, but even then, I think at the moment they're going to be reluctant to do anything while there's a little bit of uncertainty about Kyle Walker-Peters and everything. So, um,
Ipswich. What about the? I think someone might loan their striker who they got from Wimbledon.
Oh yeah, there's been a lot of talk about Al Hamadi. If Al
I think
Hamadi
that could
comes down,
happen.
that would be interesting. Actually, one that I think is theoretically interesting, although we'll see whether it actually pans out because it feels like another one off the sort of Tottenham line of highly touted,
You're going to say
go out
Dane
on
Scar,
loan,
aren't you?
doesn't really happen or whatever. And you were after a striker in at Oxford. I'm not saying it's amazing, but it's one of those ones where it's like, okay, let's see if you've actually got anything about you at this level, because you'd assume he's going to play regularly. Um,
I'm I'm just not. You know, you get some player. To be honest, I was the same with George Hurst, and he proved me
yeah,
wrong.
I was the
So
same with Troy Parrott, and he didn't. So
I mean, yeah. So you get some of these strikers where they're obviously too good at youth level, but can they? But he's not really done it in League One, and he's had spells in League
yeah,
One. But I don't know.
um,
Look, different club could work.
yeah. I mean, I feel like in terms of the bigger clubs, it doesn't feel like there's a lot there. I think, yeah, there's not a great deal. Like, I think it'll be interesting to see how it works if Middlesbrough do get Tommy Conway, just in terms of how that works, particularly in terms of minutes and all that sort of thing, is potentially interesting. So I guess that's one as well. Um, AD Tour, have you changed your mind about any teams after the first round of fixtures?
Not particularly.
No. Because even sort of like I thought Millwall would be a bit more solid. I mean, if you look at the goals they've conceded, they've conceded direct from a corner. They've
Oh god,
conceded,
I've got Jensen in goal.
yeah, they conceded a direct free kick, and I think one other where it's just like I'm not sort of overreacting even to things like Coventry losing to Stoke or anything like that, but um, so yeah, nothing really sort of changed for me based on game week 1.
Did you know Millwall created 7 big chances against Watford?
Of course they did. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, so I'm not sure much has changed really.
yeah, not much. Obviously, you need to wait a few games before. I think the Oxford performance was encouraging if you're an Oxford fan.
Absolutely. Petteri Annanen has asked, biggest player bandwagons based on game week 1.
It's going to be Burnley players, isn't it? I
Yeah, I was about
think.
to say Pires, Odebear, Vitinho,
I,
Foster.
I think Odebear might be the biggest.
I'm just trying to think. Josh Madger, obviously. Um,
You might
there's
get Wednesday, I think.
yeah, although I think they have a bit of a tougher game this week, which might sort of put some people off Sunderland away.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Normally, you get like a transfer that happens, but yeah, I'm not sure. Like Rutter got an assist. Latte Laff got a goal.
And
Look,
potentially someone like Gay for Blackburn.
could do, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
like could be someone like that.
I think
But I
what
think
would
it'll
have
be
been
Burnley.
interesting is if like a Coventry done well because they've got Oxford's.
Yeah,
Like I think there might have been people getting a bit worried that they didn't have like a Coventry player, and then you've also got like a Norwich are at home to Blackburn. If Sargent would have gone off it, there might have been a
yeah,
bit more panic. Like obviously, if you've got Sims and Sargent, you're not getting rid before those fixtures. But because I was looking going into game week 1, like who would I captain for game week 2, and I was like, oh, I think I probably would have liked a Coventry and the Norwich player, but obviously I didn't. really fancy Norwich when they've got Sarah gone and Rowe speculation. But yeah,
Yeah, like I think it's probably not sort of making people want to tear things up.
no,
And the last question is from Nonstop FPL. Said, how soon do we all jump on the Burnley bandwagon, if not on it already? So some people will have gone with one or two. I did see some Fosters knocking around.
Odder Bear I think was in
Yeah.
a few.
Um, I think it will be very quick. I think there will be some that will make the move right away. I think there will be others who I know quite a few people earmarked sort of game week 6 as the time to go to Burnley. Um, After they play Leeds away. I think there will be some people who will be looking at it and sort of thinking, they've got home games to come against Cardiff and Blackburn. They're sort of like, I want them
Yeah,
now. And neither are wrong. That's the thing.
no,
Like, um, but yeah, I think particularly if they do well against Cardiff, I think there'll be sort of more sort of itchy trigger fingers over transfers for Burnley players.
yeah. I'm not surprised though. We did mention that they were just because of the uncertainty that
Yeah,
they're a bit unknown, and we did say that maybe Burnley was the team to punt on.
yeah. Um, yeah, that's all the questions. Thank you to everyone who sent us a question. Thank you to everyone for listening. It's obviously good to be back talking about the action, or talking about proper sort of football action being back. The championship is back. Some people will feel better about that than others, but um, yeah, we're just happy to be back talking about it. Um, just trying to think whether there's anything to cover off pod schedule wise. We'll be back after the weekend's action.
I think
Um,
there is a Sunday. There's no Monday game, so maybe
yeah, I think it's just Sunday, not Monday. So it'll either be Sunday or Monday. We'll work out
probably yeah.
sort of what we're going to do, but we'll have something out for you then. So yeah, all that's left for me to say is thank you for listening and goodbye.
Goodbye.